I saw it was a magpie, one of these birds known for how smart it is. There was a full, half-liter, plastic thing of water. It was just water, okay? A water bottle. And it was full. So the magpie goes over and sips out the water. Now the beak is only, an inch and a half long or an inch at most. So it goes in until it can't reach the water anymore. So what does it do? It goes off to the side, gets a rock, just the right size, drops it into the water bottle.
It raises the level of the water.
Thereby displacing water. Here it is.
That is heavy.
You've got the video. There it is. And so it comes and it goes back and gets another stone, drops it in, and every time it drops it in, the water level rises and it can drink more water. And it keeps doing this.
That's pretty amazing.
Okay? And so every time we study animals, they're smarter than we ever thought they were. So maybe for our own ego, we kept building ourselves up, saying how separate and distinct we are as humans in the animal kingdom, when maybe we're not as separate and distinct as we think we are. So now what's my broader point there about that I was making? I just distracted myself.
Something about UFOs?
Yeah, I know. I was trying to get back to UFOs on that.
The fact that we have high-resolution cameras in our pocket and we take videos of things that are very unusual.
Exactly. So here's video of a magpie doing Bernoulli experiments on a water bottle. Who would have known that even happened, right?
Right.
Okay. You can't bring the bird into a lab and maybe you could, but I don't know that anyone did. All right. Here's my point. In the 1960s and 70s, there were many, many reports of alien abductions. People said, the aliens came to me and they brought me in and then they released me. Do you have any footage? No, they took my camera. Or no, they zapped my film and now there's no image on the film. But there were countless stories. Well, now you can stream live from your camera anything that's going on in front of you. So if the aliens come and they want to abduct you, stream it. That would be instantly viral. Oh my gosh. The stuff that goes viral is much less than that. A kitten that jumps to the table and falls, that goes viral? You don't think a video footage of an alien is not going to go viral instantly? But there's none. So I'm just saying, I'm thinking if we were being visited, somebody would have some good footage. If we were being visited, I'm thinking maybe Google satellite images would catch spaceships that are not airplanes moving on our surface. If we were being visited, I'm thinking we'd have something better than fuzzy monochromatic video of objects that apparently reveal themselves only to Navy pilots, right? So
one of the reasons is most of these sightings actually occur far offshore in the ocean. And the speculation is this is one of the ways, no, obviously I'm going to put my tinfoil hat on nice and tight.
Do your thing.
This is one of the ways that they monitor us. The best way to do it is to do it where they hold their base where no one is around, which is the ocean.
No, that's not true.
So they go in the ocean, they pop up, and they fly out.
It's not true.
What do you mean it's not true?
It's not true. Yeah, nobody lives on the ocean. Yes, that's correct.
In the ocean.
But have you it lives down under sea.
This is what the speculation
is. It lives down under sea.
That's why these transmedium devices have been these transmedium crafts have been observed.
If you are sure we are being visited by aliens and you don't actually have really good evidence, then you have to say that. Sure.
Well, you know that.
You have to say that. You have to say, this is really happening and they're observing us and they're concealing themselves in this particular way. You have to say that. And so
right.
that's your way to maintain your alien belief system by saying that. And I don't have a problem with it. Go get them. Mm-hmm. Go get them. But all of what has been put forth as evidence for aliens, to me, is insufficient evidence to excite my interest, my research interest in devoting time to finding it out. But it definitely has excited other people. I have not stopped them. I am not saying defund the military program on UAPs, which of course is just updated UFO. Right?
I know they like to say that now because there's like a stigma to UFO.
Yeah, I know. That's just that's a really transparent,
sneaky way of doing it.
No, it's not even sneaky. It's actually, I think it's embarrassing. It's like maybe if we call them UAPs,
people take them seriously.
People take them seriously. No, it's just.
I'm of the belief that they're probably akin to what we did on Mars. I don't think there's aliens in them. I have a feeling that these things are probes. And I feel like if you just think about biological entities flying through the universe, like why do that?
Right.
When you have sophisticated technology that's good enough right now from our like relatively primitive in consideration of what we think is possible a million years from now, right? But we can send that Mars rover around. We have a helicopter on Mars. I mean, there's multiple satellites flying through the universe right now taking images. We can do all that.
Yeah, but
why would
our probes are not targeting the Martian military fighter pilots.
Because there's no Martian military. But if there were, we certainly
just
would.
sitting out in the open.
Right, but if we had something like, are you familiar with one of the most famous cases was a case with Commander David Fravor of the Navy, who encountered with one or two other jets off of the Nimitz. They encountered this thing that was shaped like a Tic Tac.
Yeah.
You know the story.
Everybody knows this, yeah.
This story. It went from, they tracked it going from 80,000 feet above sea level to 50 in less than a second. They have no idea how it moved. There's no visible propulsion system. It was blocking their radar. It was actively blocking tracking.
This is what their sensors told them.
Exactly.
Just be clear about that.
And then
you're stating information as though it is facts.
I'm stating information as Commander Fravor
I don't care.
related.
That doesn't matter. He's human,
Right.
and we're all human here. But as a scientist, when you're presenting information, you don't say, this thing was at 80,000 feet and it dropped to zero to sea level in 1 second or whatever it was the measure. That's the wrong way to report it. What you say is, we have sensors that told us this is what happened.
I understand what you're saying.
Okay?
Yes.
That's a very important distinction.
Yes.
And so now, all right, your first question then, tell me about the sensors.
Yeah.
Okay. Are they double checked? Are they, you know, and so, but if you're just going to say there's this craft at 80,000, then everyone is thinking about a craft and no one is thinking about the sensor.
They actually saw it with their eyes too. This is something that they actually got.
You can't see something at 80,000 feet.
No, the actual visual on the craft.
Okay.
They didn't see it at 80,000 feet, but this craft, it's not just something that was tracked with equipment.
Got it. But they didn't see it at 80,000 feet.
Right.
That's my point. So by the way, this level of attention I'm giving to the detail and the reporting of information, we do that with fellow scientists for much less.
Oh, for sure.
Than if we're being visited by intelligent aliens from another planet. Go visit it. Go to a scientific conference and watch the level of scrutiny we put on other people's work. If they have a sensor that has a new result, we'll say, did you calibrate the sensor? How long has the sensor been in use? I'll give you an example. Here's an example, okay? Do you remember Planet X?
Yes.
The search for Planet X.
Nibiru.
That was one. There were several incarnations of Planet X.
Right.
That was among them. Okay.
That was the most wacky.
I'm talking about 100 years ago, Planet X. Okay?
Yes. 100 years ago?
Well, there's several Planet X's, right? So Uranus was moving weirdly. Nobody understood. Maybe there's a planet beyond it whose gravity we have yet to reckon in our equations. Oh, boom! We discover Neptune. Wait a minute. Neptune is moving a little unfamiliarly. My phone is. Sorry about that.
You're gonna drop that thing and break it with no case on?
So, this I got the 12, and I can still do this. I'm just sorry.
Yeah,
it's
I
not
get
dropping.
it. Last time you were here, you had a broken case. You're a broken back. Remember?
So, why are you distracting me?
Sorry.
I was like on a roll. And
Neptune.
So Neptune.
Gravity.
We're looking at Neptune's orbit, and it's not following Newton's laws. And this is odd. Well, we've been down that road before. Uranus didn't follow Newton's laws. We proposed another planet, and we found it. So Neptune's not following all the laws of gravity that from all the other planets in the sun. There must be another planet out there, a Planet X. Let's look for it.
Is that Bode's law?
Bode's law is a fitting function that gets you. It got a little more attention than it deserved. It's just that planets, every next planet is about twice as far away from the sun as the previous one. So you just make a quick equation out of that. And,
that's it?
But it doesn't work for Mercury, and it didn't work for Pluto. And
I thought it was based on the mass of the planet.
no, not at all. Mass has nothing to do with it.
Nothing to do with it?
And it predicted the asteroid belt, but the asteroid belt, there's no planet there.
Right.
Okay. And if you glue together all the pieces of the asteroid belt, you get something like 5% the mass of the moon. So yeah, it gave us the location of the asteroid belt, but that's not a planet. So Bode's law, it's fun to play with, but there are limits to how far you want to declare its relevance to the actual universe. So we're out here at Neptune, and so I said maybe there's a planet X. Everybody started looking, including Percival Lowell. All right, back in the 1920s, and he says, I want to find planet X because something's perturbing Neptune. So he sets out looking for it, and he doesn't find it. Then he hires Clyde Tombaugh. And he dies, so he doesn't see the results of this. Clyde Tombaugh, he said, I can't find it either. I will just systematically search everywhere. Because if you think something's affecting you gravitationally, you ought to have some idea where it is to be tugging on you in that way. All right? That's not some kind of weird, it's like you're moving differently. Where must the thing be to tug on you so that you're moving in that way? Right. No one could find such a planet X. So Clyde Tombaugh said, it's got to be out there somewhere. I will systematically image the entire sky. All right? And you got to do it on multiple nights, because if something's moving, you'd see it change from one picture to the next. He does this, discovers Pluto. Was Pluto where planet X was supposed to have been? No. Was Pluto the mass that planet X should have been? Everyone assumed it was. But over the decades, the mass of Pluto got lower and lower and lower as our estimates got more and more accurate. And then we found out that Pluto is 1/5 the mass of our moon, made of half ice. And this is why Pluto got into trouble later in the 20th century. It's not because we had some vendetta against Pluto. Pluto just never belonged in that list to begin with. That's really how you need to think about it. Anyhow, there's still the matter of Neptune's orbit. Pluto did not have enough mass to make those changes. So the search for planet X continued. So what happens? All right. 1993. A colleague of mine named Miles Standish. Okay? He's probably related to the Miles Standish on the Mayflower. He is an astrophysicist, looked at all of the data people were using to say Neptune's orbit was crooked. Looked at all the data. Then he found out that at one particular observatory, was it the gearbox or the timing mechanism, had just been cleaned or swapped out. Or there was some, because in the observing log, you write down everything because you just don't know. Okay, was there a glitch in the current? Was there a bird fly over? You make notes of everything. One of the observatories whose data was being grafted together with the other observatories had this sort of gearbox. I don't remember if it was a gearbox. There was some mechanical adjustment that was made. He said, I wonder if that had an effect on the positioning of this telescope. He removed those data from his analysis and fitted data to all the other telescopes that he had for the positions of Uranus. Of Neptune. When he did that, planet X evaporated in that instant. In that instant. There was no planet X. All the other data, when he connects across, removing the data from the one where the observing log said they did something different, Neptune fell right on to Newton's laws. And so since 1993, there is no planet X. And Pluto, and were it not for that, we probably would have been a long time before we discovered Pluto because no one would have looked for it.
They found another Pluto.
Let me just finish the lesson there.
Okay.
The lesson there is you have information that you think is correct from your sensors. This was an observatory, a fine observatory. And you're going to say, this observatory says Neptune is misbehaving. But then you learned there was something wrong with the data. You throw it out. So I'm trying to say this happens all the time in science. You have to be careful what you're analyzing before you declare that what the thing measured is true, and then realign all your resources to address what you think is true when it might have just simply been a glitch or multiple glitches or anything. And we do this all the time in science.
Do you know of there's a very famous painting that shows what appears to be men in crafts flying through the sky in the background of an ancient painting? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. I actually have a page. One of the first pages I ever put on my website is like a bunch of these, because throughout history there are these indications of ships, of craft.
But
like,
you know what the one I'm talking
Yes.
about? It's like, and
Yes.
that's the shape of it. It's also like a plate turned on its side, and then there's a person inside
Yes.
of it.
Yeah, man. It's
And it's
exciting.
flying through in that same. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Like, look
Yeah,
look
it's
how
incredible.
it's flying.
But you know, the thing is that everybody can say art. The one above that's pretty cool because that was a hidden thing. I've studied that one where it says Discovery 15th century. Above her left shoulder, there is an object, and if you really zoom in, look at the dude staring up at it. As a painter, my wife is a painter. Everything is intentional.
Where's the guy? The guy on the
right
the
over there. It's
corner.
pretty cool.
Looking up.
So I think that's 15th century. It said. So the problem with this, Joe, is
Go to the original one, the one that we just looked at, Jamie. The one right before that. Yeah. See, get a big picture of that.
Yeah.
That is so strange. Like
Yeah,
here
man.
you got Christ being crucified, and then above him UFOs. Like, and is that supposed to be aliens or is that supposed to be angels? Like,
So-
what is that supposed to be in these things that they have? It's real similar to what we're talking about here.
That's the argument of Miracle of Fatima, let's say. I mean, again, this is so speculative. We have a witness here of, Pilate, but when you see something like the Miracle of Fatima, if you look at
What is the Miracle of Fatima?
God, that's that one that was, considered a real miracle by the church, and the 3 kids were getting messages. I'll get this all wrong, but for like months that they're going to be visited and to bring people, and bigger groups gathered to where there was over 100,000 people.
What year is this?
1917.
1917. So, dozens of thousands, if not hundreds, but dozens for sure, see an event, a mass sighting of something that happened. We're talking people that were religious, people that weren't religious, doctors at the time.
That's not a real image, is it,
No,
Jamie?
that one was doctored a little bit, so you could see like they're all looking at something.
But that's not real.
Yeah,
But that's
that thing wasn't
but
really
that's
there.
the crowd, right? The crowd is real. Is that right?
Yeah.
So
Picture the crowd
here's
is
the thing. People come out, something happened that was so intense. Some people thought it was religious, that it was a visitation, but other people saw it as technological, like something descended. Look into it. I'm just saying art, pictures, like paintings we're talking about, man, you can interpret them all day. I can't hold on to that. I can hold on to an eyewitness with other eyewitnesses, with radar systems, and with video. We're in a different era now. We don't have to paint it, man. We get to see it. It's fascinating, man.
It is fascinating, but it's way more fascinating when someone like you talks about it versus some fucking random kook. That's what makes me incredibly interested, is just your credibility and the fact that this is not, you don't have a history of seeing wacky shit that other people don't see.
No, just this once.
But it's on video, and that there's other ones as well. It's really strange. And I've seen people try to explain it away, and what I don't like about when they explain it away or attempt to explain it away is that they're trying really hard. They're not going, who knows what this fucking thing is? They're not looking at it like cleanly. They're looking at it like a quote-unquote skeptic. I don't like the idea of being a skeptic. Not that I don't think you should be skeptical of certain things. I certainly think you should be, but there's a lot of people that brand themselves as skeptics, and I think it's a lazy way to look at things. I really do, because I think you're just looking for the holes in things without looking at it objectively. If you wanted to be a scientist, if you wanted to be someone who is a fan of science, then you have to look at it as a thing. Like, look at this information and let's study this without any bias, any preconceived notions. I don't think they're doing that. They're looking at it and they're trying to find a way where they can justify that it's fake. And they're just doing all sorts of mental gymnastics to try to make it fake. That video that you show where that thing slips off to the left and takes off at incredible rates of speed, that alone should freak people the fuck out.
Yeah, well, I think because people confuse all the time, like we took the video. No, it was another crew that took the video. We watched it for 5 minutes with our eyeballs, and there was 4 of us. And we all have the same story. We all saw the same stuff. we all came back and looked at each other and scratched our head and said, WTF, I mean, serious? What was that?
What do you think the UFO phenomenon is?
Yeah. So I think, first of all, that there are a lot of different varieties of it. But when we look at, like we were looking at the Francis of Assisi and the kind of historical things and the abductions and things like that, I think that it's been around for a long time, and that these are things that are in communication with us. So what I do in my book, both the books that I wrote about this, is I talk to people who I think represent thousands of people. So each person in the book represents thousands, if not more, maybe many thousands of people who have had experiences and the ways in which they interpret them. So all of the people seem to have had experiences where now what they want to do is they actually want to work for justice in different ways. Like Jose, the veteran in my book, he's working with young people and helping them deal with being addicted to social media and things like that, and helping them get through life, which is really hard right now. And that's what he's doing. And then you look at Dr. Whiteley, right? So she's working in the Space Force. She's trying to, help people deal with the fact that they're seeing things that, that could down planes and things like that. And she's helping people talk about that. She's helping people. Each person is somehow doing what I'm suggesting that I think is an out to this kind of structural injustice that we see. So I think that this is a transformational thing without the drugs, is what's going on. Like some kind of massive experience that people are having, and now it's getting out, and people are being able to talk to each other through Reddit communities and different types of social media. So it is it's we did see religions, when they become viral at one point. We've never seen it in an age where we have digital technology, but this is what we're seeing now.
What do you think the physical objects are?
Well, okay, so this is something that's very interesting. We just looked at the Shroud of Turin. I believe that there are these, I would call them, and this is just my own non-scientific term, interdimensional objects. They're objects that have characteristics of our dimension and some other dimension.
So some other dimension has the capability, or something from some other dimension has the capability of transporting a physical object into our realm.
Or even imprinting onto a physical object. Yeah.
How so?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think
What
that's
do you mean
what.
by, what does that mean, imprinting onto
So
a
with the
physical
Shroud
object?
of Turin,
Okay.
we see the imprint of the image, and
If it's real.
yeah, if it's real, but it's an anomalous object. So we do have, from Gary Nolan, engineered objects that we don't know how they're engineered, but they definitely look like they're it's off planet. I would call the kinds of things that we see in the historical record interdimensional types of things. Now, how? I don't know, Joe. Okay, so I just don't know. But I do think that scientists in the government know that these things exist, and they would like to figure it out. And so part of disclosure, the disclosure movement, is outsourcing this and trying to get as many people as possible to help in figuring it out.
What do you think when they use the term donations? What do you think the purpose of that is? If there is an object that is purposely released into our, like I'm sure you're aware of cargo cults, right?
Yes. Yeah.
So with cargo cults, for people that don't know, there's been some islands during World War I and World War II where planes landed there and they left, and these people, they created these statues of these planes, and they worshiped them, and they
wanted them to come back.
Yes, they
yeah,
wanted them
because
to
they
come
got
back.
food and all
Yes.
kinds of wonderful things from the planes.
Right, and
yeah,
they-
like they thought of them as deities.
right, the same way we
Yeah.
would think of something from
Like
somewhere
this.
else.
Yeah. Yeah. So that in my field has been called the cargo cult, the UFO cargo cult, right? And obviously Tyler and James view these parts as donate. They called it the donation site, right? So giving it the idea
Is that just one theory?
Yeah, that's just one theory.
Are there other theories that there's a biological organism that encounters a lightning storm and it actually crashes and there's physical bodies?
Oh yeah,
that are
there
recovered?
is that. Yeah, there's that
Yeah.
going
What's your
around.
take on that? Because that's one of the things that Grush talked about and some of the other people talked about, that there are biological things that have been recovered.
Well, what impressed me about what he said was that he used the term biologics. And I actually know that term because that's the same term that Tyler was talking about when he was creating materials in anti-gravity spaces on space shuttles and such. So I was wondering, because David Grush does get his information from people allegedly in the programs, but he's never seen these materials that I know of.
I think he has some firsthand experience that he was not able to talk about.
Okay.
That he's alluding to.
Okay.
I
Right.
think, but this
Yeah.
this is recent, and he's been very careful about how he releases this information and what he's able to release and not able to release. And
Right.
that I was like, okay,
Yeah,
Really?
so I mean, I've not seen any bodies, nor have I seen intact craft, but I also have had. Now, remember, I don't have a clearance like he has, so I can actually talk about what people have told me. I have had people tell me that yes, Diana, there are intact craft. I don't know. I mean, maybe. So I don't know, Joe.
have you studied Bob Lazar?
Okay, yes, I am always asked about Bob Lazar.
Yeah.
And I don't know, but I can tell you that people that I've met who are associated with the programs tell me that he's right. Now I know his background and I know, all the things. I don't have an opinion one way or the other, but I can also say that a lot of times people with very disturbing backgrounds, who could be easily discredited, are given information and shown things and told things.
Well, I would think that that's sort of like a little escape clause.
Yeah, I think so. I think it is.
I mean, the guy's obviously a genius and was obviously a propulsion expert. He put a fucking jet engine on a Honda in like the 1980s. He's a
I know.
fascinating guy.
Yeah, yeah.
And, he claims that there's some element that exists in other places in the universe, which leads me to believe, not even to believe, but so here's the question. Are some of these things from other planets? Is that also in the equation? I mean, just because something is traveling interdimensionally, we do know that there are an infinite number of planets
Yeah.
in the universe. I mean, we have no idea how many of them are capable of supporting human-like life or some other kind of life or an infinite number of varieties of life. And if that life can do what we've done and get to some part of its progression where it's capable of creating what we're calling artificial intelligence or super advanced technology, why wouldn't it come here?
Yes, I'm not discounting ET.
So that could be there too.
I think so, especially because of the ways in which the materials are being manufactured off planet, like the ones that we just saw. And that was information when I met Tyler 2014, and now it's a full-on thing that's happening, right? So it's a supercharged program of creating things that will help us off planet. I mean, certainly then, yeah, I think so. I mean, but I don't know.
Right.
So I have to just be honest.
So it might be a bunch of different things happening all at the same time, interdimensionally, extraterrestrially, something from a distant galaxy that's figured out some new method of propulsion that's beyond our imagination that can visit, and then also things that are coming here from other dimensions.
Yes. And even recently, somebody had, I can't say anything. I can't say I'm sorry. I don't want to be that person that
Okay.
goes on your show and
No,
says,
it's
"Oh,
okay.
I can't say that."
I
But
understand.
I probably, most likely there are if there's crash retrievals here on Earth, perhaps there are in space as well.
Do you, when they talk about inventions that emerged post-Roswell. That's one of the points of speculation, is that we have back-engineered something, and that this led to the creation of fiber optics and a lot of other technologies that seem to emerge after that time.
Yeah. So this question was prominent in my mind in 2012 when I met Jacques Vallée. So I was already aware of his work, even as a person who hadn't studied UFOs or even believed in them. Jacques Vallée is just one of these people, right, that you come across his work and he's fascinating. So I thought it was strange that not only was he a person who was, pre-engineered ARPANET, right? He was on ARPANET, which is pre-internet. He was creating that at the same time as being obsessed with UFOs and being a ufologist. These things seemed that they had to be together, right? There was something that, what's going on here? So, and I'm in touch with him often. And he says a lot of things that are rather cryptic, but sometimes I ask him specifically, was what you were doing on ARPANET related to back-engineered UFO parts? And then he'd say something like, there are many secrets in Silicon Valley, something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, he's real cryptic. He's kind of difficult to have a conversation with publicly.
Well, it does have I guess there are lots of secrets in Silicon Valley.
Of course.
Which is where he lives.
Yeah. Another thing that was really fascinating about your book was you were talking about how much religion he studied.
Yes. That was really interesting. So in the book, what I do is I uncover not just him, but Alan Hynek. They were friends. And they were both Rosicrucians, which is a form of, he might not like me to say this, but it's a form of mystical Christianity in a sense. But a lot of Rosicrucians don't view their roots as Christian. They look at it as Egyptian. But it's an esoteric tradition, and it involves meditation. I think it most likely involves this thing that you and I have been discussing in the whole talk so far is the pineal gland thing, the access point, because both of them believe in this kind of life, this meditating and things like that. And so I included references. Everything I say in my books, by the way, I pass to the person that I'm writing the chapter about. So everything that I said about Jacques, I gave it to him beforehand, and I said, are you okay with me saying this publicly? And so it passed all the tests. And I also talk about going to his apartment and seeing his library, which is an amazing library. And he has stained glass from Chartres Cathedral. And Chartres Cathedral is a special place for Rosicrucians, like a special place of presence of the sacred. And he actually did those himself. So he learned how to do stained glass from people at Chartres, by the way. And yeah, just amazing. And he had a lot of books on angels and fallen angels in that library, like almost like it was almost like going into the Vatican archive, going into this place, because these looked like first editions or close. So, really, really old books about this topic.
Fallen angel.
Yeah. I was pretty shocked when I went. We were going to have lunch and talk about the crash site and maybe talk about, what I learned from Tyler and that kind of thing. And we went to lunch, and then he said, do you want to see the library? And I was like, yes, of course. So I saw the handwritten documents from Project Blue Book. And that was just going into the library. That wasn't actually in the library. Then when we got in there, I noticed big bookcases of these books. And of course I was drawn to them. And he said, he picked out one and he opened it and it was about angels. And he said, this is a book about angels. And I could see that. And I was looking at it. I was like, wow. And then I looked at the other bookshelf, and that bookshelf was just as impressive. And then it was about fallen angels. He said, oh, this one's about fallen angels. And then he made a joke. And he said, you can't have one without the other. And I thought that was really interesting.
That does seem to align with what we're talking about, with like the struggle of good and evil.
It does. That's what he said too. And I was actually shocked at that point. I was like, wow. So just, I'm a professor of religion, so I'm like, yeah. I'm right about, my intuition was somehow confirmed.
And by the way, I think people I think this should be. I'm not sure if this is totally true, but I believe he was the inspiration for the French character in Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
I think so.
Yeah. Are you, Jeremy? I'm sure you're aware of this. The footage from the Mexican Air Force.
Yeah, very aware of that.
What do you think about that?
Well, again, it's IR footage, which is really interesting. They actually got the cameras for drug runners, right? So you can see in the infrared, so it's beyond the observable, eye. I myself have not detailed looked at the footage. However, FLIR experts and people that work with NSA have looked at it for me, and these are not lights in the distance. These are craft, very similar to what Commander Fravor talks about, without plumes, without heat signatures, non-traditional field propulsion systems. We don't have that.
And I thought they tried to. Is this it right here? Is this the Mexican Air Force footage?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
if
they
you-
tried to say these were lights on like an oil rig out in the water. That's been debunked.
Yeah, they
and-
tried to say it was a fire in an oil rig,
it's-
right?
no.
The 2004
Talk to the pilots.
Comcast Video of the Year was the Mexican Air Force tracking like 6. So literally right after our incident, we come back, and I think we were getting ready to go to Fallon, and I had Comcast, and the home page comes up, and there's this video, and I go, holy cow, that looks like what we chased. And it was like 6 of these things, and they were tracking them in the same area too, right off the coast of Ensenada.
And it's not as rare. There's now admitted an increased frequency. A Pentagon spokeswoman finally went off script. I was tracking the scripts for the last 2 years of what Pentagon spokespeople say about Commander Favor's experience. Someone went off script last week in the New York Times, and she admitted there's an increased frequency of near misses because of these AAVs, anomalous aerospace vehicles. So it's pretty astounding. We're getting all these kind of revelatory moments in these little seeds that these are not ours. We don't have this. Even Elon doesn't have this. I mean, this is a propulsion system unlike anything we have. It's amazing. It's gravity propelled.
Now, that gimbal footage,
Yeah.
when it said that there's a fleet of them, how far away are those guys where you don't see the individual objects, you only see a singular spot?
Well, the pod is, when you get pretty narrow, it'd be like, if I put 3 people around you, I can look at you and not see the other people. So that's what
Right.
the pod is doing. But the radar is seeing everything because it has an AESA radar in it, which is an active electronically scanned array. So instead of like the radars we had, which did the mechanical, doing this, like old school, this thing is just a panel that sits in the front of the airplane, and through beam sharing or beam shaping, it can move and it can look all over. So we used to have what was called track while scan, so we would be able to track a target while we're still scanning. This thing has scan while it scans while it tracks. So it literally, if it sees you, if the radar sees you, it has basically a weapons quality solution. And it can do that on multiple targets. It's the same way the spy radar, the Aegis system works on the cruisers. It can track multiple targets and have weapons quality on all these different targets while it's still scanning a volume.
So in that image, you're seeing one individual object, but there's other objects?
Yes, the radar is seeing the object that the pod is looking at where they're talking. And when you hear the video, you hear the pilot say, dude, look at the SA page. There's a whole fleet of them. So what they're seeing is the pod is looking at the main. That's the bigger object that the gimbal, the thing that's rotating on the screen, and there's 5 smaller things in front. So this thing's just sitting there, and then he said they turn around on the radar and start going the other way while the pod's looking at this guy just kind of rotating.
So like a mothership and smaller aircraft?
Could be.
Something along those lines. Is there video of those smaller aircrafts or just the video
No.
of the one large
No,
one?
the only thing they have is the targeting pod. I would highly doubt, even if they had the video, that they're going to release the radar video because of classification levels.
Are you able to tell the story you told me about what was underwater with your other buddy? Because is that okay?
Yeah. So it's amazing. People come out of the woodwork when they figure out you've had this, because now they don't feel alone. So I was working. I still do it, but I was doing oil and gas at the time on a contract, and one of the guys, the story came out, and he was a Navy helicopter pilot. And he comes in, he goes, dude, hey, can I talk to you, man? I go, what about? He goes, dude, I got to talk to you. And I said, what do you want to talk to me about? He says, dude, you know your UFO? He said, yeah. He goes, I had a similar experience. I said, what's that? He said, he was flying CH-53s, which is a big heavy lift that the Marine Corps uses, and the Navy uses it for certain things. And when they go for the East Coast, they do a lot of shooting off of, at the time, it was off of Puerto Rico. We had Roosevelt Roads that they ended up closing. But he was flying out of there. And, you got super clear Caribbean water. And they have these things, they're called BQMs. They fly around, and then when they're all done, because they'll fly towards the ships, and the ship they can track with the radar. And then they also do in the ships or submarines shoot torpedoes. They're called telemetry rounds. So they gather all the data on what the torpedo is doing underwater, and then they blow ballast, and this thing will come to the surface and float. And then they go pick them up, and then they can extract all the data out of them. So they do it for both. So he said the first time they're out and they're going to pick up this BQM, and those things when they're flying, they're done. A parachute comes out and they got to go. They hook it up. The helo drops the swimmer in the water. He goes and hooks this whole thing up, and then they hoist the whole thing up and fly back, and then they extract the data. So he says he's sitting in the front. In helicopters, there's, CH-53, you can actually see down by your feet, just like typical, like you go to Hawaiian ride, because you can see when you're touching down. So you got really good visibility out of those things, and you can stick your head out the window, too, because you're just kind of hanging out. He says he's going on there, and they're getting this thing hooked up, and as he's looking down, because they're, 50 feet above the water, he sees kind of this dark mass coming up from the depths. And they start to hoist the diver up, and they've got the BQM, and as they hoist it up, he says, and he's looking at this thing going, what the hell is that? And then it just goes back down underwater. It just once they pull the kid and the BQM out of the water, this object descends back into the depths. So he thinks, well, that was pretty weird. So he goes out, he says, not too long later, a few months later, he's out and he's picking up a torpedo. So he says they hook the diver up on the winch and they're lowering him in, and as he's looking down, he sees this big, massive, he goes, it's not a submarine. He's seen submarines before. Once you see a submarine, you can't confuse it with something else. This big object, kind of circular, he says, is coming up from the depths, and he starts screaming through the intercom system to tell him to pull the diver up, and the diver's like a few feet from the water. So they reverse the winch, and the diver's thinking, what the hell's going on? And he's getting pulled up, and all of a sudden, he said the torpedo just got sucked down underwater, and the object just descended back down into the depths, and they never recovered the torpedo.
Jesus.
And this happened in the late 90s, mid to late 90s, I think it is. I could probably get in touch with him and ask him. And he told me this story, and I'm like,
how do you report that?
You come in and go, well, where'd the torpedo go? It just got sucked down. It just went down, and then you get the people that attribute it as, something happened when it blew ballast and it just took on water and sank. And he's like, it didn't sink. He goes, it literally looked like it got sucked down. The only reason they talked to him when they did the New York Times stuff, they talked to him, but because the incident was from the 90s, they wanted something, newer. So they did not include it, but I know they talked to him about it.
Now, what was the other footage that we were looking at? There was the first footage that Jamie pulled up that wasn't the gimbal footage.
Mm-hmm.
That was
the Go
something else?
Fast.
The Go Fast. What is that?
That's it actually looks more like a Tic Tac, but they saw it going across the water, and they're just grabbing a lock. So they're seeing this with their eyes, and he gets the FLIR to lock on it, and that's when you hear the kid go, "Oh, I got it," because he gets the auto track, and it's just something screaming across the surface of the water. So.
And this is in the same area?
This is East Coast, yeah. This is the same time frame as the gimbal video.
So the idea that these are birds, or the idea that this is a radar glitch, or somebody said pilot error, like on a clear blue day, Commander Fravor has nerves. I mean, that kind of thing that people have said on your show to you, that, these are explanations that make sense.
Who said that?
I don't want to say their names.
Mick West?
Yeah, sure.
Mick believes everything. Like every single thing that's ever happened has a rational explanation for it.
so the probability that all the radars went off at the wrong time. Commander Fravor had nerves. That all the other pilots up there with him, that this thing shot off like a gun instantly. Like that was somehow perfectly coordinated. That's a conspiracy. That's a fabrication. Probably Occam's razors. The events happened exactly like we're being told.
Yeah, for us it was. And I'll go back to the beginning of the story of, the other pilot who was brand new. She had been in the squadron for 4 months, 5 months. So she's pretty junior. She was still working on her initial qual on the airplane. And, so she gets we get the real world vector, and it's like, okay, real world vector, cool. I'm going to get to do something real, exciting. Then you see the water, and you think, oh, something's sinking, because it's kind of that shape of an airplane, that cross type. So now it's, oh crap, now it's search and rescue. We got to go down and see, because there's people, and we are sympathetic. And to the Tic Tac, and as soon as the Tic Tac, it's like, holy shit, what is that? And when you get, some people get very emotional when you talk about it. Because for me, it was like, for her, when you talk to her, she has a disdain for some of the leadership that didn't tell us that these things were out there. They're here now, we're getting vectored because we were the first time the manned airplanes had been airborne when one of these things showed up. that no one even gave us a brief that, hey, we're seeing these objects out here for the last 2 weeks. They're just kind of, you might want to know they're out there. And they never told us. No one knew these things existed besides the radar operators. And the radar operators didn't know what they were. They just knew they were seeing blips. So and there's a lot of stuff that, that it flew around and it came around me, and it didn't do any of that stuff. It's the story that I gave you is just relatively benign. But it was, it's an interesting experience.
So these incidents that they reported were taking place before you saw that Tic Tac encounter.
Yeah,
they were taking place over a period of how many weeks?
2 weeks.
2
We
weeks.
went out at the beginning of the month for this 2 week at sea period. We pulled in for Thanksgiving, but other than that, we were out till I think December 21st is when we pulled the ship back in. Besides pulling in for the 3 days at Thanksgiving. So yeah, for the 2 weeks prior, so this was on the 14th, and we went out at the beginning of the month. So about 2 weeks, they'd been watching these things come down, go up, come down, go up. But it was always when we were not flying, which is really probably like the midnight time frame until early in the morning the next, till noon the next day. And then we just happened to go. And if you think about it, I laugh at, if there was some little green man flying around in that Tic Tac, he probably got back to the mothership and got yelled at for being seen.
How long were you there?
I'd say about 6 months or so.
And what progress was made while you were there?
Well, we came up with a bunch of reasonably good ideas about how the reactor worked. And one of them was the square base of it was essentially like a cyclotron, which is a small particle accelerator, a circular one. Particle accelerators, linear particle accelerators, are just a, long tube essentially, and they accelerate particles with high voltage and radio frequencies till they reach high speeds. But a cyclotron does that in a small circular area. And there's this very heavy element fuel, element 115, something that wasn't on our periodic charts at the time.
But it is now.
It is now, yeah.
When did it become on the periodic table now, the way the charts now?
I don't remember. Do you remember when they...
2004, Darmstadt, Germany, I think, is where they first fabricated 4 atoms. They lasted 220 milliseconds with the atoms. It's nothing, right? And then it later was discovered a couple more times they could fabricate it. Then they gave it a place then on the periodic chart. After that, called it Moscovium.
So they told you about this stuff in 1982?
Yeah, well,
No,
we
not
kind of...
1982.
What year was this?
It was 88 and 89 when
you
I
were
was there.
Oh, okay.
82 is when
82 was
I
when
was
you
at
were at
Los Alamos.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So 88, 89, they told you about this stuff. So this was not like...
No, they didn't tell me about it. That's one of the things that this group came up with. The God, I keep losing my train of thought with this thing.
So this one area, this element 115 was the fuel.
Yeah, it was the fuel.
The world will forgive you for having a migraine. Can I just
It's really
say
hard to think through this.
understand.
Just give me a minute.
We'll just give you more
I
booze.
just want to say one. Yeah, definitely. I was going to say one thing. But for the last 30 years, people have just been on the attack on Bob. Getting to know him, the personal effects on his life. It's really hard to understand unless you meet his family and his wife. I mean, this is the last thing he wanted to fucking do was have to talk.
Yeah, we should explain that, Jeremy, that you and I had this conversation. I
a
watched
long
your
time.
documentary. We had this conversation, and I said, I have to talk to him.
Yeah.
The document, there's been detractors. There's been a bunch of people that called bullshit on many of the things that you've said, but over time, many of the things that you talked about, even in the 80s, have proven to be true. Things that people said were not true were proven to be true. Element 115 was one of them, right?
Right. Element 115, the fuel they had, was stable. In other words, it didn't decay. It wasn't emitting radioactivity. When they synthesized 2 or 3 atoms of the 115, it did decay, and it was not a stable element. So they're kind of 2 different things. But this is kind of typical. Elements always have, or pretty much always have, stable isotopes and unstable isotopes. Like I think cesium has like 30 unstable isotopes to it. So, hydrogen, for example, you're familiar with hydrogen gas. It's stable. It's not radioactive. But there's also 2 other types of hydrogen, deuterium and tritium. And deuterium isn't radioactive. It's another stable isotope of hydrogen, but tritium is radioactive. Now, they're all hydrogen, but they just have different amounts of neutrons. So it's the same thing with other elements and element 115. Depending on the amount of neutrons it has, designates the isotope, but it's 115. They will continue to take or experiment and try and make 115 at different isotopes, and I'm sure eventually they'll come up with a stable version, but it's the stable version that has the properties that we're talking about.
So they somehow or another had acquired a stable version. Did they say that the stable version had come with this craft?
Yeah, it absolutely
did.
came with the craft, yeah.
So at the time, you having a firm knowledge of the periodic chart and knowing what was real and what wasn't real, what was your reaction to having this stable element 115 that wasn't even supposed to exist?
Well, everything was impossible.
Right.
I mean, down to the metal. I did get a chance to look inside the craft on only one occasion, and this was important because where the reactor sat might have been critical to how it operated, since everything operates without any interconnection, so the placement of components might be critical. So they allowed me to go inside and look at it. Again, I forgot where the hell I am.
So you're going into this craft, and what are you thinking when you're inside of it? Like, what are you seeing?
It's a very ominous feeling because there are no, first of all, everything is one color. It's like a dark pewter color, and there are no right angles anywhere. It's as if somebody took, I've said this before, somebody took a model and fashioned it out of wax and then heated it just for a short time so everything melted. Everything looks like it's fused together. Everything has a radius of curvature where two items meet. It's a really weird looking thing. But there was almost nothing other than a small foldable hatchway that looked recognizable. Everything was really unworldly, to pick on it, a way to describe it.
So you get inside this thing, and it's designed for something that's much smaller than a human being.
Yeah, you can't really stand up till you get to the very center of it.
And how tall are you?
I'm 5'10".
And what do you think this was designed for?
I'd say something close to half my height.
Wow. So these little 3-foot tallish creatures.
Yeah, and the seats were small too. I mean, obviously it was made, for something small. But there is no, there's nothing else in there. There's just seats, the reactor, and some of the subcomponents. There's no control panels. There's no bathroom. There's no decorative components or artwork or anything that you would recognize or trim. I mean, it's just a very bare bones thing.
You're not seeing any screens?
Well, there are archways around it that are part of the superstructure, and that one of the archways can become transparent. When I was in there was another group working on one of the archways, and you could call that a screen, more or less.
So through that archway, it would maintain the solidity, the solid, whatever metal it was.
Yeah,
but you could see through it.
Yeah, it just became transparent. Yeah, I saw that happen once or twice before I left.
Did you ask any questions about what the fuck?
No,
there's
no asking.
There's
questions.
no asking questions.
No.
But when you watch something become transparent, and you realize it's still there, but you could now see through it.
Yeah, I mean, now that's not that impressive. We do have some liquid crystal materials that are like that. They have
I've seen that in bathrooms.
smart glass. Yeah, they call it smart glass. So this is just, and I don't know if the craft is made of, an advanced metal or a ceramic. It was cold to the touch, so I would lean more towards a metal.
You're not allowed to ask questions.
No, they work on the buddy system, so I can only exchange ideas and talk to Barry. Now, this really interferes with science because science is based on free discussion. And ideally, you get a bunch of guys together, exchange ideas, work on problems, and that's how things move forward. But they're so over-the-top concerned about security, they split everything off, and everybody becomes stagnant. It just destroys any of the progress you can make, or at least makes it go so slow. I think they wind up shooting themselves in the foot.
Which is probably why they arrived at this bottleneck that they needed to get this madman with a jet-powered Honda to come in and see what he could do.
I think that was an act of desperation. I think they wanted someone that thinks out of the box and let's just give this guy a try here, because they weren't, and they might have done this 4 more times since up to the point in time today, assuming they're still working on this thing.
And when you see this craft and you're inside, was there any indication that there was an area that they would use to control it, to pilot it? Was there a pilot seat? There
were 3 seats. They sat around. The reactor was in the dead center of it, and then equidistant around there were 3 seats. And that's all. There was a large. They're not consoles. They're large rectangular objects, also spaced equidistant around the center. There's nothing on them. There's no buttons. There's no lights. There's no controls.
Look the same color, the same
Everything
thing.
is the same
it's
color.
Just a different shape.
Right. And directly underneath them, there's 3 levels in the craft. The main level is what we're talking about. Directly under that, those are the gravity amplifiers, the big rectangular objects. Underneath them are the gravity emitters that look like, for lack of a better word, a trash can hanging on a pipe. 3 of those. And then the top layer, this is just my personal belief, I think that has to do with a navigation or their version of a computer with some planar panels, sensor panels around the craft that we would call portholes, but they're not portholes. They're just black areas. And I think that just determines its position in space. But I physically was in the center section, and I stuck my torso in the bottom section and hung upside down so I could see how the gravity amplifiers were positioned.
What is the roughly the size of this thing?
I don't remember from being there, but after all this stuff was over, I had John Andrews, a guy from the Testers Model Corporation, and we sat down and tried to figure out from what I saw and known sizes of things, and we came up with 52 feet in diameter. And
so
I think
that's fairly small.
Yeah, so I think that's a reasonable guess.
Now, you said there's 9 of them, and you got a brief glimpse at the other ones. How were they different?
Oh, they looked completely different. One looked like I called a Jell-O mold, and it looked like a classic Jell-O mold with the rippled sides to it. One was a very flat disc, like a straw hat or something like that. That was sitting up on its edge, and the thin part of it looked like a projectile had been fired through the edge of it. So I don't know if they were attempting to see if the metal could be penetrated, or if that's where the thing came from. Maybe it was shot down. But that was the only one where I saw there was, actual physical damage to it.
And that one was roughly the same size? They're all...
They were kind of too far away to tell.
And there was several teams that were working on the propulsion system, so there was different teams that were working on these different aircrafts?
I don't know. I could only assume.
Right. Now, when you're sitting in this thing and you're looking at this otherworldly craft, your goal is to try to figure out how this thing functions. Your goal is to try to figure out how this reactor. But you would imagine they would give you more time than just one day to check that out.
Oh, it wasn't one day.
Right.
Yeah, Barry was there. I think Barry was sleeping there. I'm sure they had. Now, that isn't weird. Up at the Tonopah test range where they work on stealth fighters, you go, I think, 3 weeks on, 1 week off, and you stay up there too. So it's not weird to stay up at the test site.
Right.
So, I think he pretty much, and he acted like he's been up there for a long time.
Yeah.
But
he's still there.
Yeah. Who knows?
Do you have contact with this guy?
No. Oh, no. I wish I did. I kind of thought he was going to come out after I did.
Right.
And I think I took so much flack and it's so much shit for what went on. I think I wound up helping security there, and everybody became afraid of, doing or saying anything after that.
So what kind of reports did you have to give? So you're not making much progress, right? You're just trying to figure out what this thing is, and it seems impossible. So
Well, we didn't personally make them. I mean, we were always, there was never a lot of information that we gained. The guy, you would call him our supervisor, his name was Dennis Mariani, and kind of a military-looking guy. And he would routinely pop in, during the day and, hey, what's going on, guys? And he would essentially relay any information, anything new we came up with. I mean, he was our go-between, where we presented him the information, then he took it to wherever they were, assembling all the data from everybody.
now, I assume you're working normal days, like an 8-hour day?
No,
No?
it was really weird that I would be only called in on certain times and certain days, and they would be weird hours too. Most of the time was later in the evening. I mean, I can get a call at 11 o'clock at night, and they'll say, it's now 11 o'clock. By 11:45, you need to be at the McCarran terminal, and we'll let you know when we have more information.
But what did you do while you were there? If you're looking at this object, this reactor, and you can't figure out what it is or how it works, other than the fact that it works on this element that we don't even know about.
Sure. I mean, the thing was what you do with anything. If you're trying to analyze it, all you can do is perform tests. And all we did is try and come up with every kind of test we possibly could. I mean, we tested, it violated a lot of what we thought was impossible to violate. I mean, one of the first laws of thermodynamics, I mean, essentially any machine, any device that operates always makes extra heat. Nothing works at 100% efficient. Even the headphones you're wearing, anything that takes power, some of that power is going to be converted to heat, and it's just wasted. This didn't. I mean, we looked at, back then we had infrared cameras. They're different today, but back then you had to pour liquid nitrogen into the camera to cool the sensor down and get these infrared images you've seen. But it never got, no matter what the load was on the reactor, it never got above the ambient temperature, which is impossible. I mean, you're, pulling out huge amounts of power and nothing ever gets warm. We tried measuring magnetic fields and there was nothing there. So we started playing around with the emission from the emitters, the gravity wave itself, and saw what we could do with it and how it was focused. So we really spent all our time just trying to see what the stuff can do and what we can control.
So you were seeing what it could do, but you couldn't ever figure out how it was doing it.
No, not really. I mean, we really could only use come up with a best guess. Now, I can't say we really that I could absolutely state for certainty how anything actually worked.
Now, how did you know at all how they were piloting it? Because they were doing some tests where they were having these things fly around in the sky, and this is what gets us deeper into your story.
Right. I was out there for one test. Right. In fact, I was with Barry in the lab, and Dennis came in and said, "We're about to run a test. Why don't you guys come out?" Or I think he said, "Barry, why don't you come out here and bring Bob with you?" We went out there, and the craft was already outside the hangar and was just preparing to lift off. Now, they were in communication with somebody in the craft.
So there was a person in the craft.
Yeah, there was certainly a person in there. Now, it's not a comfortable place to be in because it's small. So the guy has to be sitting on the floor in the middle, my best guess.
And this is the same specific craft that you worked on because that was the only craft that you were in.
The only one that I touched and worked on. And it quietly lifted off the ground, which was incredibly impressive to see.
Quietly or silently?
Well, quietly, because it
did it make some sort of a noise?
It produced a little corona discharge from the bottom. A corona discharge is kind of a high voltage brush, little bluish glow discharge. As it was lifting off the ground, you can hear a slight hiss sound. Now, as soon as it cleared the ground by about 5 or 10 feet, maybe even less than that, the hissing stopped and the blue glow disappeared. So It lifted off quietly, and then it hovered silently, if you want to be specific.
Wow. So then what kind of maneuvers was it doing?
It took off, for that particular time, it took off, moved a little around to the left and right, and then sat back down. The craft itself, they communicated with it with because I saw the guy talking in a regular VHF radio to the person in the craft. And I even saw the frequency that was on the frequency counter of the communication, the transceiver there. But what's weird is he shouldn't be able to communicate with the craft with a radio. The radio wave should bend around the craft. I mean, it shouldn't be possible. Every single thing about the craft and the way they operated didn't make any sense to us. I mean, that's something we talked about for a while after.
Why should the frequency bend around the craft?
Well, you really have to look at the way the gravity wave comes out of the craft. There's the reactor's in the center, and there's a waveguide that goes up to the top. There's actually a small appendage that sticks out of the top of the craft, and it produces a heart-shaped gravitational distortion around the craft. Now, if the craft is sitting in the air and you walk underneath it and look up, you actually cannot see the craft. The light bends around it. You're bending gravity, bends light. It bends radio waves. It shouldn't be possible to communicate with a craft that has an envelope around it that's distorting all forms of energy. But they were apparently in contact with it.
Somehow or another, so through some unexplained way that they didn't bother explaining to you.
Mm-hmm.
So this thing gets up, it just does some very simple maneuvers, left, right, goes down. And did they discuss this with you? I mean, they said they wanted you to see it.
No, they just wanted, they didn't discuss anything with me. It sat down, we looked around for a bit, and Barry said, let's go back. We went back in the lab. All we got to do was see it. Fast forward to some months later, I did have the test flight schedule of the craft. Now, they had times they had designated high-performance tests. This obviously wasn't one that was a high-performance test. The high-performance test goes above the mountain range, and they do much more radical moves with the thing. Look, this is a prized item, and they're not doing anything like taking it out of the atmosphere or flying around to other countries or anything like that. They just play with this thing right over the test site. But they were doing some radical moves with it. And since I had the test flight schedule, statistically, the amount of traffic in the surrounding areas on the highway was lowest on Wednesdays. And that's why Dennis told us that all the test flights occurred only on Wednesdays, because it'd be the least chance that anyone would see what's going on.
And this was before the government had expanded the forbidden territory around Area 51 and Papoose Lake and all that stuff, right?
Yeah, I think that occurred after my story came out. Then people started going up on the mountaintops and trying to look down into there, and they kind of freaked out and then did the land grab and pushed everybody back. But yeah, I think all that occurred long after that I came out.